let's do it.
Okay,
Or
I'll go.
is that us? Just wanna.
Should I go live now?
I just wanna
Okay.
refresh to make sure it's working.
Okay, I'm going live in 5, 4, 3,
Ooh.
2, 1.
Thank you, Judy. Wanna make sure it's running live. That's cool. I think we are. So welcome to our first Edify Fireside chat on LinkedIn Live. Today we have Dr. Craig Daly with us from University of Glasgow School of Life Sciences, and who's also, who I know from the board of ArcXR, which is the Advanced Research Center for Extended Reality at the University of Glasgow, which will be opening next year. So I'll pass over to Dr. Daly to introduce himself again and at the talk and talk a little bit more about the research.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Sereni, for the for the invitation to talk. As you can see from my title here, VR for Life Sciences Teaching and Research, and I'm delighted to give the talk and to also tell you about how exciting times are right now for those of us in life science. That so much has changed in the last few years, particularly in the last 10 years, that I think that there's real opportunities here to make big advances for life science through both AR and VR. So at the moment, my role is as a senior lecturer in the School of Life Sciences, and I teach physiology and pharmacology, and in particular the physiology and pharmacology of blood vessels. And I thought what I would do for the first few slides is just give you a bit of background to what I've been doing over the last few decades that will hopefully show you how, well, it might help explain why I'm so excited about where we're headed in the next few years. So hopefully, if I can get this next slide up. No. There we go. You see that okay? Next slide, yeah.
Yeah, that's all good.
So there's me around about 1983. You can see hairstyles were a bit different in those days. But what I'm doing there is I'm doing some adrenergic research. I've got bits of blood vessel inside the little organ baths, which are over here, if you can see my pointer. And I would add drugs to the bath, and the tissues would contract or relax because the drugs activate receptors. And this raised questions in our mind about, but where are these receptors and how are they distributed within cells and tissues? And we thought about that for a number of years, which took us 10 years forward, around about the early 90s, 92 and 93. And we bought our first confocal laser scanning microscope. So these are fancy microscopes that have multiple lasers, and they will scan the preparation and they will create a 3D model. Well, no, actually, they won't create a 3D model. What they create, or what they provide, is a series of 2D images, which can be reconstructed to make a 3D model. Now, think back to 1993, if you're old enough to remember, what were computers like in 1993? Now, the microscopes were capable in those days of producing massive amounts of data. But as you can see the pictures on the left there of what we had to work with, Macintosh computers had just become color. And they still had disk drives. And those disks, those was on new disk, those ones you could get 1.2 megabytes on each disk. That meant you could store 4 images on a disk. There's 10 disks in a box, and one of those confocal data sets would occupy an entire box of disks. So you can imagine that our office was full of boxes of disks, each box with just one single data set. Now, what's important to note here is that people were quite selective then about what they saved and what they didn't save. And I'll come back to that because that links to something I'll say towards the end. In order to do any kind of 3D processing, you would need to buy one of these silicon graphics computers that you see pictured here. This is an Indigo 2, and we had one of them. Cost us, I think, about £19,000. In 1993, you could have probably bought a one-bedroom flat near the university for the same price as that computer back then. But even then, it wasn't that great. Stepping forward a further 10 years, Glasgow Science Centre opened in 2003. And they had within the Science Centre a virtual reality suite. It never really got used very much. And it had within it, as you can see there, an £800,000 SGI Onyx 3, I think it was called a reality monster. Huge computer. In fact, I think they had two of them, one in the Science Centre and one that was driving the activities in the IMAX. But because we had a number of years' experience of collecting data and processing it on the Silicon Graphics workstation, we had data in a format that we could relatively easily take over to the Science Centre just on CDs. So we had free access pretty much to this facility. Now, it wasn't used because I think we were one of very few groups who actually had a reason for using a facility like this and also had data in the right format. Now, what I'm pointing at there is some bit of a cell on a blood vessel, but that screen there would normally be kind of blurry and you would need to use 3D stereo glasses in order for this, in order to see it. So that's been switched off for the purposes of the photograph. But at almost £1 million worth of equipment, you still had a visualization facility that was cool and was, it was good at the time, but it wasn't, truth be told, for that amount of money, it wasn't that great. So, it's only been in recent years then that computing power has caught up with the ability of these microscopes. And so we can actually now do some reasonably good processing. And I'll come on to the VR, but just before we got to the VR part of this, we were thinking about taking our data sets and making 3D models and trying to get the data into software like 3D Studio Max and Maya and trying to make some nice animations with this type of data. This is after I had a visit to the digital design studio and realized they were doing some really lovely work using this high-end animation software. And I thought it would be really good if we could take our 3D data sets and get them into this animation software. I did that for a couple of years, starting around about 2013. But what this made me start to think about was how we process data to make it into these mesh files. It's like .obj and .fbx files, the kind of data format that would be required for the animation software. And that was when we realized that the data that we get from the microscopes produces enormous amounts of geometry. And if anybody who's watching this is involved in any digital animation will know that keeping the poly count down of these objects is really important. And particularly when you get to software like Unity, it's not really comfortable with objects that have maybe 40 or 50 million polys. So the challenge that we have within the biological research is to threshold and segment our data to make these structures like you can see in the image here, but to get the poly count down such that it's usable by other software like Maya and in particular Unity. Now, let me just going to run this one again, actually, because there's a couple of things to point out. So the data there, that's the data as it comes off the microscope. That's exactly what it looks like. That thresholding and segmentation to make these structures was pretty much done by hand. And I'm hopeful that artificial intelligence and machine learning will considerably speed up that process. And I've already tinkered around a little bit with some machine learning that we could maybe talk about a wee bit later on today. So that was confocal imaging, making movies, 2013. What I've been doing more recently is using VR, and this came after Neil McDonald gave me a demo in 2017 of the HTC Vive, and I thought that's fantastic. Finally, computers and visualization techniques have reached the point where we can actually exploit the 3D data that we collect on the microscopes. And this is using software called Confocal VR. It's written by a guy called Tom Skillman, who's developed the entire piece of software. His company is Immersive Science, and it's a fabulous piece of software. I'm easily manipulating there a 3-channel data set, confocal data of a blood vessel. There's some nuclei, there's some big fat cells there. I can switch some of the channels on and off. There's measurement options in there. In that case there, we were just looking at the nuclei. And I think in this point in the wee video, so it's a bit shaky here. My head was all over the place. It's quite difficult making videos or capturing videos in VR, I've found, and you've always got to try to be mindful of keep your head still. So there's an excluder, a circular excluder that when you push that sphere into the data, it obscures the data within the sphere, which allows you to see better inside the data. I don't know if I explained that particularly well, but you can change the shape of the excluders, and there's a whole ton of stuff that you can do in Tom's software, and that's my kind of go-to software for the moment if I want to just check a confocal data set. So if you remember, I mentioned when we were back in 1993 about how the computers were very limited in the way they could process data and also storage space. Now, storage space, of course, is no longer an issue. As you know, you can buy a 1 terabyte disk drive for what, 30, 40 pounds. You can get probably unlimited storage space with a reasonable amount of money on cloud drives. So that means then that life scientists, particularly those who use scanning instruments, are no longer bound by keeping only their best data sets. Now, I know that I've probably only ever shown or displayed about 10% of the data that I've collected. It's probably even less than 10%. I've got hundreds, maybe thousands of gigabytes of data, 3D data sets that I've collected over the years that I've done nothing with. And it might be because the data didn't show exactly the thing that I wanted, or there was maybe a small bit of the data that just didn't look quite right. And I thought, well, if other scientists, researchers, microscopists are like me, and they've got tons of data that they're not actually using, maybe we could actually build a catalogue or a database of this unused, unwanted, perhaps unloved data. And we got some money, and this was in collaboration with Annabelle Slater, got some money from the college through a BBSRC fund to go around the college and ask various researchers if they had any old data, any old 3D data that they were finished with. And to our surprise, I didn't think that very many people would want to give up their nice 3D data sets. But to our surprise, almost everybody that we spoke to said, yeah, in fact, we'll give you these nice data sets rather than the ones that we don't want to use anymore. So the idea of the project was to collect as much data as we could from around the college and then build a database. So having collected a bunch of data, we then thought, okay, well, how do we build a database? And realized that it was probably beyond us to actually build a database, and maybe the best thing to do would be to stick it on Sketchfab. So we created the Glasgow Life Sciences Sketchfab collection. And of course, the advantage of Sketchfab if you've looked at it, is that it has already built into it the capacity to animate 3D structures, to texture them, give some textures a bit of opacity. But perhaps more importantly for this presentation is that there's a VR visualization capacity already built in. So every model that you see there, and for the 45 models that we've collected from about 13 different research groups that sit within the GLS Sketchfab collection, you can view them all in VR from a full headset down to a Google Cardboard. And I've found that the students in classes really like this. There's been 35,500 model views since we opened that catalogue last year, and we don't advertise it or anything. So I think there's an untapped wealth of data out there that could be repurposed as part of a content creation project for life sciences. So not just in our university, probably in other universities. There's other data sets in Sketchfab, and of course there's TurboSquid and other asset stores. So there's a ton of data out there, but I don't think that for the most part, life scientists are really aware of it, or if they are aware of it, do they have the tools to do anything with it? Fact is actually, yes, all the tools that they would need are there, and they're probably free, but of course there's a bit of a learning curve to get over. So what we did with what we thought were the best of the data sets was took a selection of these data sets, and we bought a gallery from the Unity asset store. I think it cost us maybe about $30, and we threw away the stuff that was in the gallery, and we populated it with some of these models that you see here. So your there's a sheep embryo, that one. There's some viruses around there. There's bits of blood vessels. And that was really, I was so excited the first time I saw the first version of that data gallery, to be able to walk around or teleport around a 3D space, pick up all these 3D models was just amazing. And then we got the opportunity to show the data collection, the gallery, to this group of level 3 physiology students. Now they're in the Mobius lab, which is, as you know, the forerunner of that Edify project. The reason why they're looking at the gallery is because the cardiovascular application that we were going to use on that day wasn't quite ready. So we showed them the gut application from Edify, but we took the opportunity to show them the data gallery. And in the blue shirt there is Annabelle Slater, who helped me who built that gallery. Now Annabelle left at the end of the project, and that left me with the task of having to finish it off and wrap it up and perhaps make it into something a bit more commercially available. But actually, I thought the easiest thing to do was, rather than to try to pick up the threads of what Annabelle did, was to actually build it again, because I'd realized in using Edify that you had, or Edify had put a gallery in there, a big empty space. So I thought, oh well, I could take the models from Sketchfab and could pop them in this gallery, and I hung some confocal images on the walls. We've got, if you can see the pointer there, the big pink thing here is some pancreatic cells, wee blue blobs. The wee blue circles there are insulin. There's some prostate cancer cells. We've got another pancreatic beta cell there. So you can wander around that gallery, you can pick up the exhibits. I haven't got to the point yet of annotating everything, and I'd intended to do that in the summer, and well, I better get on with it. So I found Edify really useful for recreating the gallery. Also, I was involved in the cardiovascular app. Now I've put that picture of me back in there because up in the top left corner, because if you remember, I said back in 1983, I was outside the blood vessels, adding drugs to the blood vessels and making them contract. And then just last year, I had the opportunity through the Mobius and Edify project to finally stand inside the blood vessel in fully immersive VR and watch the drugs act on receptors and various enzymes. So, and that was terrific, and it's a wonderful wee application that allows students to learn, hopefully learn how the different drugs work in treating hypertension. So that was a nice, after 30 years, I finally got to stand inside the blood vessel this time and see the drugs work. I just want to take a sidestep just for a minute or two here to say that I made this image up just a couple of, just yesterday, in fact. This is huge. For me, this image is huge. The AlphaFold project is a machine learning project that has predicted the structure of receptors which have not yet been solved by crystallography or the normal way in which you would define the structure, the 3D structure of receptors. These are predictions, and the AlphaFold database is now available to the public. So I was able to download the 3 alpha-1 receptors that I've been looking at for near 40 years now. And finally, yesterday, I put them into software called Nanome, and I was able to stand and wander through these 3 receptors. And it was just an amazing feeling to finally see what these 3 receptors look like, and actually how different one of them looks from the other 2, which was quite unexpected. I think machine learning has got a lot to offer life scientists. Okay, I'll speed up now towards the end. What do I want? Well, what do I hope was going to come next? I've really got into this photorealistic rendering. It's great for biological structures. It takes a lot of lighting, surfaces, subsurface scattering. It takes ages to render these images. But wouldn't it be great if that kind of real-time ray tracing was available in VR, where you could incorporate complex lighting and textures? At the moment, I don't think seeing that kind of quality of a render in VR is going to be possible, but it's only a matter of time and computing power, I suppose. I had an early attempt at trying to take confocal data into Unity, and this was me thinking about what else could we do with confocal data. And you see, there you see some early attempts of me just not long after I got my first headset. So this would have been sort of the latter part of 2017 and into 2018, trying to learn how to use Unity and Steam VR, the software development kit. And that looks pretty scrappy and not very impressive. But I tell you, the first time that I was able to pull a VR headset on and walk through one of those data sets was just absolutely mind-blowing. We've gone one better now, though, and working with Angela Douglas, we got a project, we got funding from the Physiological Society to build this game called Cellogenesis. It's a game that's in 2 scenes. The first scene happens in a lab, and the second scene happens inside the cell. You've got to solve 6 puzzles, and the learning outcomes are about how mitochondria work and how pH is important in the cells. We're hoping that this is going to be ready for release by the end of August. It's all completely immersive VR, and this is really quite an exciting sort of educational project. Right, can I finish just by showing the trailer for the game? It only lasts a few seconds, and then I'm done. And that's us. So that's 40 years of starting off throwing drugs at receptors and to fully immersive VR. And I think the possibilities are really exciting for the next few years for life scientists. And I'll finish off there.
Thank you so much, Craig. Exciting. You can't see that on the live stream, but I'll just have a little round of applause in our little end. And thanks so much.
Shall I stop the share?
It's up to you. You can have it up a bit longer if that's easier. Okay. But I'm just gonna go through a few comments. I can see there's a few questions. I can see Martin has joined us. Hi, Martin.
Hi, Craig. How you doing? That was fantastic. Thanks. That was amazing.
Thanks a lot.
So great.
I've got loads of questions as usual, Sharoni, but do you want to do
good. We want questions. But I can see that some people really enjoyed the circular excluder. Not quite sure what that was, but I'm sure that's beautiful because all your pictures were beautiful, Craig. So a lot of people will find it very interesting. Martin commented saying that it was interesting to see that the challenges of keeping the head still that we have been battling in Edify. And then I think you said that, Martin, do you want to pick that up?
Yeah, we exactly the same thing, you know, from Mobius through and then starting Edify. As soon as you had an audience, as soon as it wasn't just you yourself and the experience and you were sharing that experience, the head movement was instantly a thing. I don't know if you've come or you have any mitigation strategies. We built two things. One, we dampened the head movement the way you would in kind of other software, so that at least it was smoothed a bit. But even then, I think just personalities wise, with some people that would teach like this, you know, with their heads going, and other people who were a bit calmer. Yeah. The other thing we then built were static cameras. So in the VR space, you could position a camera, and that way that's fixed, and then you can go as an avatar and point at stuff and take part. So I don't know if you've tried any of that in Edify, or if you've seen any other good mitigations for that.
No, I haven't. No, and you know actually sharing stuff in VR is relatively new to me. I've been kind of, you know, for the most part, stuck in my office looking at stuff myself in VR, and it's only probably been in the last year that I've thought, okay, now it's time to get out of the office and start to show this to people, and that's when you realise his head movement's too much. And I've tried in Premiere Pro to try and fix it, but it ends up the computer just crashes. You know?
Actually, but we'll need to show you some of that. That was kind of interesting. Can I just ask questions here, Sharoni? Will I just fire away?
Yeah, I'll just pitch in when I get a minute. Keep on going.
Probably no particular order, but I maybe missed it. I was on the live stream on LinkedIn and then jumped across to Zoom. But in terms of those galleries that you created, where did those data sets come from? Are they scans or are they generated from software? How's that work?
Yeah, so the vast majority of them are confocal laser scanning data sets. So we would collect the raw data and then render them in, you know, we've got a selection of softwares that we might use to make the 3D models, and then threshold and segment them. Then the data would probably go through Mesh Lab or something to, you know, fix non-manifold geometry and patch up holes, and then it would go into Sketchfab. So there's a few steps that data goes through, and there are the viral ones where they were just actually built up. They were just drawn from I think in 3D Studio Max, and there's one data set, doesn't feature in the gallery, but might well soon, which is an MRI scan.
Super interesting. So two things. That's, I mean, my background is wrangling those same data sets, but for the built environment, for buildings and terrains. And certainly LiDAR and other scanning of terrains gives you exactly the same problem. You get these colossal meshes. And then the process by which you bring them down to a size you can handle has always been a challenge. So it sounds like parallel challenges there.
Yeah, so I mean, that's exactly the thing that I struggle with all the time, is to try to get the poly count down, but at the same time, obviously maintaining, you know, anatomical accuracy. Yeah. And then there does come a sort of threshold point and you think, well, you know, okay, Unity might like that, but I'm not too keen on it. But a lot of the threshold and segmentation that we need to do is by hand, because the objects are so unusual looking and irregular shapes, and one so close to another it might blend in. So a lot of the segmentation often will be done by hand using the digitizing tablet, and that's why I'm hopeful that machine learning algorithms might be able to improve automatic thresholding, and done a little bit of work with Google Colab and the Jupyter notebooks running these Python scripts. There's a couple of applications out at the moment that run in the image analysis software that are allowing people like me who don't do any Python scripting or any kind of scripting to actually get into this machine learning. And all that we need to do is to throw the algorithm a bunch of labeled, control data sets, say like, this is what the thing looks like, and then train the algorithm from there.
No, fascinating. And again, parallel world. I mean, I think the world of terrain scanning, natural environment, sounds almost identical challenges. And the one thing I've seen recently, which looks super interesting, we've tested and has worked, is Unreal Engine. Actually, obviously, the kind of somewhat competitor to Unity. I mean, we built Edify in Unity for now, but Unreal Engine 5's got a system in it called Nanite, and it is literally eating hundreds of millions and billions of polys, and able to play them back, and then maybe even looking at another part of it with photorealistic rendering on a reasonably normal high-end but GPU on the RTX GPUs. So a very high-end gaming PC is crunching through, in some cases, billions of polys, which is mind-blowing to see.
I mean, I have thought about, since I mean, although I've used Unity, I've kind of scratched the surface with Unity, but when I saw the stuff coming out from Unreal Engine about the real-time ray tracing, and I thought maybe this is time for me to actually switch, because I haven't invested a huge amount of time in Unity. So if I could ask you a question then, is this the time to jump to Unreal Engine?
Horses for courses is my answer to that all the time, and it's a live question for us. I think Unity has lots going for it. It's lightweight in and of itself. It's great with mobile, cross-platform publishing across all the different iOS, Android, web, PC, Mac, everything. Although they both do a good job, I think we've always found Unity a bit better for that. And there was just enough. We were probably a 60-40 decision whenever it was 3-4 years ago when we started Mobius, and it carried through to Edify. We now see definite use cases for Unreal, and those mammoth data sets as a key one. So maybe we can take this offline. I think Robert's on the call, or at least he's watching a live stream on LinkedIn this evening. So he will have seen your presentation. Let's hook up a conversation, because he's been testing Unreal Engine 5 and Nanite. And honestly, it's just mind-blowing. It's 10x or more effectively done in software based on the same hardware in terms of the number of polys and then the beauty. And the beauty stuff almost comes for free out of the box with Unreal. So, and I was going to, it's the same kind of conversation, but the photoreal stuff you were showing there, you can definitely get that probably a little bit easier out the box in Unreal. And there is again, our guys are on the line here, high dynamic something pipeline, I can't remember what it's called in Unity, as the super high end rendering. So you could probably just effectively flip the switch on for that within Unity and just see how far you can go. I guess the things you're doing, the offline rendering in Max with VRA.
Those were both just done on decent gaming laptops using at the Arnold renderer in Maya.
Yeah, super beautiful. So the stuff coming out of Arnold's absolutely gorgeous, but you wait for it. Whereas Unreal's not quite there, but it's very close and it's instant. So I do it's well worth an explore, and I think you'll find kind of horses for courses. But can I ask another question then? Again, your game at the end there looks great, and it was quite beautiful. You know, there was the lab looked really nice and depth of field and all that. So was that Unity or Unreal?
That was Unity.
Unity as well. So again, I think the level of quality you're getting there is really great. You know, so again, maybe you stick with your own skill sets, you know, you're already there. So.
Well, that's not the thing is that's not my skill set. That was
Okay.
Angela Douglas that built all of that, every single bottle, everything, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, she's incredibly gifted at
Well,
doing
listen,
that. So
again, a parallel conversation. We built a lab or a couple of labs actually within Edify and other things. So there's a lot of that stuff pre-built, and the assets are all there. So maybe there's a chat to be had. It's probably my last one then was, and again, I don't know your side of the world at all very well, but AlphaFold and then Nanome, to get in about those kind of machine learning generated, I guess, future guesses at the kind of evolved structures there. Do they, again, I'm stepping outside my knowledge zone here, but do they come in the PDB format? Because we built the molecule viewer within Edify to view PDBs. So
they do. I downloaded those 3 receptors that I showed from the AlphaFold database. I downloaded them in PDB format.
Well, let's again, probably yet another sidetrack conversation, but our molecule viewer is sitting there and it allows you to compare side by side in VR and mirror the experience and measure and take photographs and shoot video and all that. So be interested because we're obviously we built that in partnership with probably one of your other colleagues at GU. But I wonder what else you would think it would need to be this really kind of powerful tool. So,
well, the reason why I'm investigating Nanome just now, so I know about the molecule viewer in Edify. I've seen that and it looks great. The thing that Nanome has is a lot of you can get information about the way in which drugs bind to the binding sites. It will tell you the strength of the binding of the drug. It also gives you the opportunity to build your own molecules and see how they bind to the receptor. And so there's a lot of you can do some real sort of structure-based pharmacology and drug design. But that of course comes with extra plugins and extra money and so on. So I'm on a 30-day trial at the moment. That's all.
Cool.
For
Nanome. I mean, our role is the bit where it becomes a lesson or an audience participation piece, whereas these professional tools will always do a great job of that. So I guess my interest then in Nanome would be what can it output? Can you output the PDBs back out of it once you've done your work? At which point maybe they can go in a gallery or whatever, they can become part of a lesson. But
I don't know. I've not got that far yet. But,
Very cool. Anyway, loads of strands of conversation. But that's me for my questions. I don't know if there's anybody else with any more.
So shall I dive in with mine? Really nice to meet you, Craig.
Hi, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I've come from a bit of an optics background, and it's really interesting. You know, I guess the confocal microscopy, I guess all the sorts of cool tools like, you know, Raman spectrometry you can do. And is there other emerging sort of standard data formats across the various tools, and what do you do about metadata and things like that?
So one of the problems in the microscopes is that, you know, Leica, Zeiss, Biorad, Olympus, they've all got their own particular file format. So in the end, you know, if because I work with a lot of different people, helping them with their image analysis, and normally what I'll ask them is, look, can you just bring me a stack of TIFF files? You know, so you know, I don't want your proprietary format, because unless I've got a plugin for ImageJ that'll open it, I just want a series of TIFF files. So that gets around pretty much everything so far. Or DICOM,
yeah.
I was going to ask Chris, you know more about this than me, but DICOM. So we built again a DICOM viewer and take MRI data and CAT scans and all those things. Would that play here? I mean, is that of interest to you guys as well to be able to use a DICOM viewer?
Well, definitely. I mean, all the medical scanners are you know, they're pushing out DICOM data. There's a nice 3D viewer called 3D Slicer. If you've heard of that, it's a 3D, really nice 3D package, which has a ton of plugins. It's almost kind of like the 3D version of ImageJ, and it's really set up. You can get a series of TIFF files in, but really that was designed to open DICOM files. There's a nice NVIDIA AI plugin that fits right into 3D Slicer. So thresholding and segmentation of medical data is works really, really well in 3D Slicer.
I think that's really interesting. I think we've got an internal discussion with our product team as to how far you know, how back in the process we want to go, because it's really easy for us now to, you know, import from Sketchfab and let somebody else do all the really hard work. But actually, you know, that, you know, with the PDB format, with probably the native formats coming out of the microscopes, with DICOM, if we can actually start building some of that stuff into Edify, you know, the slicer, the thresholding tools, maybe even some of offline, you know, AI or you know, geometry reduction, etc. I think that could be a really, you know, bring some real utility, because we're doing the same in the built environment. You know, we've got the equivalent in the built environment with point clouds and laser scans and BIM data and GIS data. It's almost the same problem, but at a different scale.
Yeah, and then it's interesting. You've got all of these data sets that in the end you want it to either be a .obj, a .fbx, or STL to print it. You know, you know, just start with that.
Exactly. GLB seems to be the kind of new move for a universal 3D formats. We'll see where we've started using that a lot.
Which one is that? Sorry, Martin.
GLB.
ALB.
G.
AGB.
Sorry.
GLB.
GLB. We'll share some information.
GLB.
Sketchfab are supporting it heavily now.
All right.
And it's this kind of really neat interchange format for 3D files.
I haven't heard of that one.
A bit lighter weight and a bit more nimble than FBX, which, I mean, I've been in the built environment space for a long time, for 20, 30 years now, and I've seen FBX kind of grow up and become a bit of an unwieldy beast of a format. And yeah, OBJ and these other very, very long-standing formats are very universal, but I think GLB is well worth a look. We can again share some information on that.
Well, for me, these are just file extensions. I wouldn't, you know, if you have to show me a raw file, I wouldn't know an FBX from a .obj.
Nor would I just know the ones that causes problems. So, and again, maybe another wee thought or a wee question on photorealism. I get why. I mean, I come from a very visual background. I get why it's more beautiful. But is there more utility? Is there more? Can you learn more, see more? What more do you get out of it by it being photorealistic?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, it looks pretty, doesn't it? But but it's still the same structures in the same place.
But is there value in it? Is there real value in it, or is it an experiential thing? As it just feels incredible?
I'll have to pass on that. Actually, I'll come back to you if I can think of a good reason why you would really, really want that, other than just lovely. I don't. Yeah, probably not. Actually, you know, at the moment, I can't think of what could I see using a photorealistic render that I couldn't see just by looking at the volumetric data in the first instance with a VR headset. Yeah. No, I guess it's just Hollywood style animations.
Yeah. And presentation matters, you know, it really does matter. But I just wondered if there was a real direct utility. Yeah,
front cover of the journal, and you know the difference between getting that grant and not getting it.
Exactly. Brilliant.
Thank you. But just saying that we'll need to answer a few questions from the audience. There's so many comments. Craig, you can stop sharing the screen, by the way, so we can. There has been so many kind comments from the audience about your talk, so please read through them. I don't think we have time for me to read through them all, but I'll read out most of the questions that we had. So Dorothy Idulis has had a few questions. She said that she read an article on New Scientist recently about nausea in VR and migraine sufferers. So I think I might have a question, an answer for this from one of the previous fireside chats that I'll share a link to from in the comment section later on. But the question was if you think that VR can tell us much about this, the sort of the migraine suffering, VR, motion sickness more, or things like that, and or the physiology behind it in general.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about the migraine stuff, but certainly for nausea, it would be really nice if we were allowed to make students sick. Probably shouldn't be saying that when this is recorded, but you know, it's such an easy way to make somebody feel ill. And you know, it happened to me when I was playing Boneworks, or there was another one I've forgotten, the kind of Dungeons and Dragons game thing, and I ended up on a horse riding from one village to another, and I felt absolutely ill at the end of it, and yet managed to play through the whole Half-Life Alyx and it was fine. So, you know, it's incredible when you finally feel that sickness. It was recognizable as, to me, it felt like seasickness, which I'd had maybe just once before. And it happens really quickly. You can feel it coming on, and it only takes maybe 30, 40 minutes to go away once you take the headset off. But as a physiologist, I find it absolutely fascinating that you can make somebody kind of ill, but they recover quickly. So yeah, and I know there's some research going on in the university about motion sickness in VR. So I think it's a fabulous tool for trying to learn about the mechanisms of nausea. The migraine thing, I don't know, but I would imagine that if you're suffering from migraine, then maybe a particular scene that's dark and, I don't know, whatever a migraine, I don't suffer, but whatever a migraine sufferer would tell you would help. That's a great thing about VR. You can create it instantly. As long as, I would imagine, as long as the headset's not too tight. I would think.
Yeah, definitely. But I will share those links to the university, at least the research I know, but I'm sure there's other people who didn't see the talk, they might pitch in and share the research going on there. And then there's a very long kind comments from Virginia. It was great. I agree. It was great to see people using Mobius as well. And I think it was just before the COVID-19 hit and we stopped using the lab. So I'm hoping we can get back into the Mobius labs. And the question there was, how much do you think this VR process, such as having their hands in various apps and trying them in, how this VR process affected the teaching in general? And have you noticed any significant difference or improvement in learning? And how was that experience for students overall?
The students on that one day, and that's the real disappointing thing in the whole COVID, we got into the Mobius lab in late February 2020, and then within a few weeks it was all shut down. We didn't have the chance to get back in. The students absolutely loved it, but unfortunately that's the last time I was in a class with students doing any VR. I haven't used the Edify stream option, and the reason for that was just simply because my entire timetable was already set for this year, and I had to make videos, and it was too much extra stuff to have to learn. So I would have to say, from that class, they really enjoyed it. From the individual students, I can speak about that I've shown some of the blood vessel models to. They've been absolutely blown away. And I remember one student in particular, the first time I showed him one of those VR volumetric renderings of a blood vessel, he took a headset off and said, "I never need to see that again. I think I've got it. I get the structure of blood vessels now. I would not have got that from a textbook." Now that's kind of anecdotal, and it needs some proper educational research behind it. But I haven't heard any students saying that's not going to work for me. So.
That sounds really good, very good. And it's definitely something that we've noticed. And I think there's definitely a scope even outside medical sort of training. I think we've been looking at psychology and how we can teach constructs that are a bit abstract or difficult to manipulate in the real world. Because in VR, there are no physics rules. So you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be explored as well. So it's very exciting. There's another question from Dorothy Aidolis about what kind of support in the sector is required, do you think, in order to exploit this technology to this potential for teaching and research?
Well, for teaching and research, what I've found is the time it takes to create content. I mean, you'll all know like how long it took you to create all the stuff for the Mobius apps. Now, as individual lecturers, I mean, people like me, I'm willing to spend the time to create some content because I kind of like doing that kind of stuff. But I would suspect that many of my colleagues are not that interested in learning all of the various bits and pieces of software that you might need, which is why that's a good thing about the Edify platform, is because it's kind of all in one. But it's really about time. But the other, so it's, we need time in order to create these resources, but the resources themselves, like the objects, need to be made. like to go back to Sketchfab has got a fantastic collection of stuff, as does TurboSquid. But for the biology world, most of that stuff has probably been created by artists, and it will be terrific in some cases. But if I want a real smooth muscle cell or a real cardiac myocyte, I think that's where the stuff that we've been doing with the confocal microscopes could be of value in creating catalogues of biological tissues which are anatomically accurate to within the resolution of the microscope. So the short answer there was time to do the stuff and extra probably funding for staff to crank out all of this data, or to curate all of the data that's sitting there. There's a ton of data that just needs to be mined.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question? We've wrangled this a lot again as a concept, and we're aware that what's publicly available in the Sketchfabs covers some bases but not enough. And I'm really interested in your create your own database with colleagues contributing move. I think that's really interesting, effectively crowdsourcing it from colleagues and then sharing. I wonder if that concept would carry through to maybe a whole lesson or a whole suite of created assets. Would the enthusiastic and capable people like you and maybe a couple of colleagues be generating a load of assets that then could be shared across the school or even further out into academic colleagues? Is that kind of one creator, 10 or 100 users thing? Do you think that could happen in a community way within academia?
Oh, I think it could. It absolutely could. And I think that's what I'd like to sort of press our institution towards, is some funding where it would be somebody's job to sit at that microscope and just create just shed loads of content. Because if it's not needed now, it is going to be needed in a few years' time. So I think right now we're kind of ahead of the game a wee bit, because the games engines and the people making games are using assets that have been created by artists. But with Unreal Engine picking up Sketchfab, if you start getting more real anatomical biological specimens in Sketchfab, then maybe the game creators might start using these assets, and then the games become even better. And I suppose if we say one thing about the games is that there's not an awful lot of educational stuff for life scientists. There's a real gap in the market there, educational games, and that's the thing that we're building for the FISSOC. Is it's a VR game, but it has learning outcomes. And is it a game or is it an educational resource? It kind of sits in the middle, and that's. I think
what's the other wee thing, maybe one for you, Sharon, and we can catch up later, is whether we might even have a role in helping collate or create that mass data set of anatomically correct stuff.
Yeah, I think the idea has been floating around for the University of Glasgow. I heard it from a few people, and I know that Craig knows a few people on the board for the XR space opening soon. I know that that's been around as an idea, which would be absolutely amazing, because when you first started talking about this, years and years of work, my first question, which I think kind of was answered over and over again, was that how many places we're in the same place and maybe are not even necessarily aware what VR capabilities are, and there might be this thousands and thousands data sets available we could utilize from people who might not even consider that. So I think the idea is definitely at an inception stage, it seems, at least the University of Glasgow. And I'll pick this up with you, Martin, and
something we can maybe contribute
who want to do this. But I think it's such a good idea for students alike, and with VR becoming such a nearly everyday activity, students engaging with it more, with spaces opening more, having those data sets, and being a biology student, having an ability to go in and explore cells by yourself as you want them, that would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So let me just double check. Martin, do you have any last minute comments? I'll just check if we've got any last questions.
No, I'll just confirm a couple of things. HDRP, Kat from our team, shares a high definition render pipeline in Unity. So for anyone trying to go to the next level of visual quality and Unity, that's the thing to look at. And I've shared the Wikipedia page for GLTF, GLB formats, which are these new 3D interchange formats. So they're worth a wee look, but they're sticking on this. They're sitting on the chat.
Great.
I can see Chris is here. Chris, do you have any last minute questions?
You're on mute, Christopher.
That's really, really insightful. I think it's provoked a lot of thought and you know, around what we want to do. But yeah, I think this whole idea of mining data sets and sharing data for the greater good, you know, we would love to be part of that. So
good.
Oh, good.
I think we are pretty much, well, we have a few more minutes, but I think there was just so much information, so we'll just give it a minute or two to finish up. Thanks again for Craig for sharing so much interesting information, and then so many ideas generated just from listening in to what you guys done, and potential is just so much to think about.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, and thanks for the invite.
And I will just ask last, and in terms of your game and publishing it, how are you publishing that? Where will it be published, and when can we get our hands on it to have a go?
No idea. We don't know what to do next. You know, we don't make games. We are physiologists. So what's going to happen is we hope to finish it in August, and then we need to think, right, how do you market a game? I don't know. I might come back to you on this. We don't know what to do next. This is all new to us.
We certainly know some people that know. We don't directly do that stuff ourselves, but the stores, the Steam store, the Epic Game Store, but if it's Unity, the Steam store is almost certainly the way to do it.
Well, the thing. Yeah. So the thing is, you know, the FizzSoc, we asked for the money for the FizzSoc. They gave us half the money. So we managed to do what we did with half the money. But really, it's only the game, I guess, would take maybe like 20 minutes to complete. So it's really only a kind of taster. In itself, it is maybe a crowdfunder for something bigger.
Bigger, yep.
Yeah. So it's been I tell you, the thing I've enjoyed the most is actually doing the music. I had not appreciated how important the sound was in the music. And as a bit of an amateur musician myself, I've found that fascinating. You know, how to, the roll off of sounds and, you know, putting the sounds, so it was my job was to put the sounds in the lab and trying to get the roll offs right between the different, that was just mind blowing. It was fascinating.
The spatial nature of sound, and that it isn't just 360, it's the full sphere, spherical space and distance.
Yeah.
And the fact was, I think you can have a good VR experience with your eyes shut. And I've always said that. I think a good VR experience with great sound, you can do a lot. You talk about Half-Life Alyx, some of that's pretty dark, you know, and the audio and that's utterly incredible. So I think really well created audio is a very significant part of a good VR experience, without a doubt. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All good.
That just gave me an idea for one more fireside chat about audio, because I know that there's pockets of research emerging, but audio is always such an understudied part of perception, but it's just so important. So we need to explore that.
Absolutely. I think without the sound, Half-Life Alyx should have been nothing. I mean, the sound in that was just awesome. It just created the tension and the anxiety when you knew there was something coming or something upstairs.
I had to come out. I couldn't do it. I had to leave. I was terrified. Yeah.
But yes, so there are loads of more comments I didn't get a chance to read. So please, if you get a chance, have a read through. There's just people mostly gushing about how lovely the images were, but there's lots of just ideas, and it's good. So I think our LinkedIn Live went pretty well first time round, so very exciting. So we'll probably try to do it again and again. So we'll see how many people join in, and hopefully more and more people can engage. And the video will be available on LinkedIn and will be available on Vimeo, and I'll share with you, Craig. And we'll keep on updating on LinkedIn.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, thanks very much. I really enjoyed that. Nice to get to tell you all about it. Lovely.
Thank you so much, Craig.
Thanks, everyone.
I'll see you all again soon, hopefully. Okay, bye.
No doubt.
Bye.
Bye.
Judy, I think you can stop.